Rebecca Traister is an at-large writer with New York Magazine. Her latest piece out today is titled The Necessity of Hope. Melissa Murray is a professor at New York University and clerked for then appeals court judge Sonia Sotomayor, also co-host of the Strict Scrutiny podcast with my wife, Kate Shaw, and Leah Littman, and they both join me now. Melissa, let me start with you on the decision. I used 5 justices in that intro because there were 5 there to do the most sort of aggressive revocation of the right. John Roberts, the chief, joined the ruling, which upholds the Mississippi law, but not the rest of it. We saw a leak before. It's substantially the same and yet still hard to process. What is your reaction to it?
We definitely got more color around the nature of the court's deliberations on this issue because we not only got the majority opinion, we also got those separate concurrences as well as a dissent. Again, I think we are getting a very clear picture that Chief Justice John Roberts has kind of lost control of the conservative wing of the court. He is sort of baying in the distance, baying in the wind. No one's really listening to him. He's suggesting that maybe there was a third way, something more minimalist, and he can't get anyone else to join him for that. The really interesting episode that I think we did not have any inkling of, although certainly some people, including myself, thought that this was on the horizon. Justice Thomas's concurrence is a shot across the bow that makes clear that abortion is not the end game here. It is really only the beginning. He says in that concurrence that although the court has tried to sequester the question of abortion from other rights like same-sex marriage and contraception, the court should in time go further to take up these other rights, which, like the right to abortion, he says, is unmoored from constitutional text and not deeply rooted in this country's tradition. And for that reason, is egregiously erroneous and should be overruled. So more to come. This is not the end.
Yeah, let me just read that portion. For that reason, in future cases, we should reconsider all of this court's substantive due process precedents. Of course, that's the line of cases that Roe is part of, including Griswold, which is, of course, the birth control, Lawrence, which is throwing out a law criminalizing gay sex in Texas, and Obergefell, of course, which makes it a constitutional right to marry. Rebecca, I want to read from your excellent piece today, which I found I needed at the right time. You write, despair is poison. It deadens people when the most important thing they could do is proceed with more drive and force and openness than they have before, which is why the work ahead is insisting on hope, behaving as if there is reason for hope, even if you feel, based on the ample available evidence, that there is not. How are you finding that right now?
Well, I think part of what I was trying to write about today is I think there's a twinned responsibility today. And the first half of it is to really sit with exactly how cruel and punitive and unjust things are, to sit with the realization that they are going to get worse, and Clarence Thomas's concurrence made that explicitly clear. We have talked on this show before about how the message has often been sent to those of us who have been worried about exactly this outcome and those of us who have been upset about the erosion of abortion rights and access, even as Roe has stood, that we were needlessly distressed about this, that Roe was never really going to be overturned. I have gotten similar messages since the leaked draft of this decision, as I and Melissa and others have worried about the future of same-sex marriage, of contraceptive access, being told, no, those are never going to go away. I've heard those messages today, despite Clarence Thomas's clarity on this. So the first task is to be really clear that message that things are okay is an anesthetizing fantasy that we have been sold to create paralysis in us. This is bad, it's horrible, and it will get worse. The second conjoined responsibility is to not let that further paralyze us, to in fact take the awfulness, the badness, the injustice, and remember that it is incumbent on us to not give in to despair or hopelessness, but instead to continue the work. As you said in your intro, we have an ample history in this country of both progress and regress. The fantasy that we were only going to move in one direction and that things were going to be okay was an absolute denial of the reality of the injustices and power imbalances that this country was built around. And it is our job, even living through the regress, especially living through the regress, to continue the fight to make things more just in the future, whether or not we live to see victories. It is incumbent on us, therefore, to use hope not as some feel-good measure, but to regard it as a tactical necessity and a moral and civic responsibility to feel the hope and keep moving and keep fighting and keep organizing, and to look for the people who have been doing it throughout while all the messages were everything's fine, nothing's going to be overturned, you're all overreacting, you're all being hysterical. No, there have been people who have been doing the work of getting people who need abortion care, reproductive health care on the ground through the erosions of Roe for many decades, and we should be looking to them now as a model, looking to support their work, fund their work, and expand it in this next chapter.
Melissa, in terms of what the court has done here, not what they might do in the future, but it's just what they have done today. And to Rebecca's point, the dissent from the three liberals says this is as bad as it looks and they're coming for it all. They describe those rights as a Jenga tower. But just, I'm struck today that the only thing that separates a court from a legislature is stare decisis, some reliance on precedent, and some consideration of reliance interest, right? I mean, if Republicans are elected, they say, we're going to repeal the ACA, and then they have the votes, they repeal the ACA. Like, that's the way a legislator works. That's not the way courts are supposed to work. This court is working like that, which is why you have it happening today. And I just wonder, like, how tenable this is as a public institution to operate in that fashion.
Well, I think the two things are conjoined, Chris. You don't get an institution that is flagrantly wresting power from the people in the way that this court has, unless you have those who are in power willing to use this court to advance a program of minoritarian rule. And you mentioned the effort to repeal the ACA. That didn't happen through majoritarian politics. The Republicans were unable to do that through majoritarian politics. And so the first thing they did was to file a lawsuit in a Texas district court to use the courts. So that's what we're up against. Like, the court has become a political entity, a political football, because it has this authority to affect domestic policy when majoritarian politics could not.
Yeah. Rebecca Traister and Melissa Murray, I really appreciate you both joining us on this difficult and enraging day. Thank you both. Appreciate it.